And you didn't want a dialogue, but you also had a similar question in your questionnaire, and I was curious what your cut is on state shared revenues. As the mayor of a city, I came to understand two things about state shared revenues. First, it was a deal we cut more than 30 years ago among cities, towns, and the state. As the stories go, because our legislative history is pretty bad in this state, and the people who are around have memories that aren't all that great either. Cities gave up their opportunity to tax in certain ways in exchange for sharing revenues, specifically income tax and sales tax that the state collects. The challenge with that arrangement has been, even during the tenure I was on the council and ultimately mayor, is that when the legislature gets very desperate in bad times, it makes the argument that everybody has to feel some of the pain, and it takes some of the state shared revenues that would otherwise go to cities and towns out and applies it to its deficit problem. Of course, the reality is that the cities and towns face exactly the same pain that the state does when the economy shrinks and revenues shrink, because the size of the pie shrinks. The legislature shouldn't get to both watch our pie slice reduce from the outside, meaning the economy is shrinking, and then also slice some more out of our slice of the pie. I argued, and unsuccessfully argued, that as long as the governor was going to potentially successfully get a 1-cent sales tax increase, cities and towns should have joined in a special deal with the state legislature and the governor, and that would have been to lock in the percentage of state shared revenues permanently. So it would be ballot protected and the legislature couldn't cut from it. They didn't do that, and I'm sad about that, because as long as we have this deal where cities and towns are constrained on the kinds of tax policy they can form, and they're limited to, and I'm actually glad they're limited to the model tax code, among other things, and that they can't tax incomes as some cities do in other states. I think that would be a nightmare. But it has to be stabilized in a way that local governments can count on it. And during the last 10 years, we've seen twice state shared revenues tacked with the percentage shrunk. That then doubly hurts cities because the size of the pie is already shrunk, and then a piece of it gets sliced off. Add to that the sweeps of HERF funds and other things that provide local governments with the money to maintain infrastructure, and the gas tax, for example, is intended specifically for that use. We've lost all of that. So I would first seek ways in which we make permanent the sharing ratio. I would also work with cities and towns, and not all of my colleagues agree with this. I think there are some economies of size or scale that can be picked up by single point of collection. And now cities and towns properly worry about that, and I get that. I wouldn't trust the state government either unless I had it in an agreement in a form that could not be undone by a legislature. But if we had the means by which, as property taxes are collected in a single point of payment, it saves businesses the hassle of multiple reports. We've certainly worked on the multiple audit problem, but frankly, I think the sales tax system itself is in huge need of rewrite so that cities and the state can count more clearly on what that revenue stream looks like, but also so that businesses don't spend so darn much time reporting and figuring out what it is they have to pay. The intention behind the sales tax piece of all of this was that services never be taxed, and that only the inputs to goods sold to consumers would be taxed. And with as many things as we've cobbled on in the last 30 years, caterers, for example, have been added to the restaurant classification. The department actually takes the position that all labor is taxable. Those are the kinds of things that are making the state shared revenue system more complicated, but also making the purpose of that system more difficult to manage. And I think we could do a lot better job. Now, does the treasurer have any direct role in that? No. But I think the treasurer should have and should serve in an advocacy role to get these kinds of things addressed. And I have the background and a demonstrated record of doing that.